The Alpha Draconians predate humans well over hundreds of millions of years. They are sapient reptoids who were seeded here by another unknown and vastly superior reptilian who are loosely identified as the Tiamatians. They appeared into our reality from another dimension, somewhere from what the Hindu Sanskrit texts refer to as locus and talus. The points of entry into our known universe is suspected to be through a gateway at Thuban and Alwade. The propagation on Earth initially began with the seeding of dinosaurs. As Sauria-blooded dinosaurs evolved into Iguanodontia, dinosaur intelligence became more sapient. Eventually they became upright and walked as bipedals, known as saurians. As they became more advanced to the point that the saurians developed a space program even more sophisticated than what we know to be as NASA, the saurians may have been aware of their history and identified or perhaps longed to find the Alpha Draconian stargate that their progenitors came from. In time, these advanced saurians became known as the Sakaar, who developed what ufologists know today as the Alpha Draconian Empire. The origin of the Draconian race. Like many of the races that many believe are visiting Earth, it was hard to find where the main source of these races are. Some theorists believe they come from other planets or from alternate Earths. This has led to the topic of the origins of the Draconian race to be a very diverse topic. The most common theory that you are going to find is that they come from the planet Draco, located in the Alpha Centauri galaxy. Draconians are believed to be a warrior race that seeks to conquer planets in order to increase the borders of their interstellar empire. This need for warfare has created tension between the Draconians and other alien races. Earth, many theorize, is just one more battleground in an ancient battle that has been going without humans realizing it. The second most popular theory is that the Draconian race don't travel through space, but rather they are interdimensional travelers. They originated on a different Earth where the resources ended up running out. In order to preserve their race, they traveled to the Earth that we know, where they began to rule over the humans that they found. This ability to travel through different dimensions is the reason why theorists believe their headquarters haven't been found yet. The final theory that people tend to believe is that the Draconians were here from the start. Being superior to early man, it wasn't hard for the shapeshifters to turn the population of Earth into a massive plantation. As man began to become more intelligent, the Draconian race moved their civilization to the center of the planet. This move was both to hide their presence from the humans while also being able to survive with the changing climate. This theory has branched out into the different theories that exist around global warming. The Empire. The Sakaar are incredibly adept and considerably intelligent as a species. Their clairvoyant abilities are quite well known, and it is believed all Alpha Draconians have a telepathic ability. It is also suspected some of the elites have a surprising skill to see across and likewise move to other planes. It has been reported that contingents of Alpha Draconis elites had appeared in other planes, as these appearances were relayed by those who had achieved multi-planar travel many thousands of generations earlier. It has become widely understood that the Alpha Draconian ability to move this way had preceded their subsequent removal from some other as yet unknown place to the system. Though Alpha Draconian vocalizations are difficult to understand or make any sense of and consist of rolling atonal guttural growls and clicking noises, they are loud and harsh to human ears. It could take a significant amount of time to utter advanced concepts to primitives. It is believed that this is partially why their clairvoyant abilities are so well refined. The warrior caste that unflinchingly followed the elite's orders rarely spoke, yet somehow could communicate with each other non-vocally. When the soldiers did speak, it was quite short and poignant. Alpha Draconian society follows a more insect-like caste-based organization than true reptile social structure. Though they appear definitively reptilian and somewhat bird-like in all outward aspects, they all exhibit a body armor of scales or plated hide, and in some cases even feathery. These were apparently an evolutionary adaptation whose origins could only be guessed. They varied in colors, size, and build dependent on their caste, which could range from very large, dark black and brown with yellow or red striping for the elites, to somewhat shorter and stockier, dark red or orange and black striping for the soldiers. The non-elite and non-warrior castes were all smaller in stature and armor, and considerably weaker, though still quite formidable in their own right. The lower castes consisted of scientists, engineers, and the rest of their minor industrial society, and these caste populations were similarly very small as well. Despite such differences, all impaired fleet movements contained predominantly individuals from the warrior caste and very small contingents of the lower caste, dependent on mission requirements. Though it is still currently unknown what the Sakaar required to sustain them, it has been reported that they physically thrive on intense fear they induce on their subjects, to the point of requiring the youngest conquered subjects as foodstuff. There have been some reports that they prefer to feed on the young of man as a delicacy. There are considerable documented reports of this somewhat macabre activity. The elite. The Sakaar elite caste are the power holders and rarely venture from off homeworld, if ever, in order to occupy their literal political stranglehold and conduct empiric business from the central world called Alpha Draconis. This form of rule has held the empire together without question or internal contradiction, and throughout the compounded epics, no evolution from this form has been either attempted or even so much as hinted at. Due to the rarity of off-world sightings of the elites, it has been said that only descriptions or images of them have actually been seen, as by and large, only the warriors and other lower caste Alpha Draconians have been observed out in the general community. What descriptions have been advanced commonly refer to large leathery wings or exaggerated portions of vestigial wings. The ruling caste individuals have the appearance of notable age and wear, and their temperament is said to be utterly devoid of empathy or patience. They are obviously and considerably larger than the rest of the caste, and their physical and mental power is suggested as quite substantial. If anyone were, for some odd reason, to actually come to unprepared contact with an Alpha Draconis elite, it has been suggested this would be a very bad thing. Colonization. As a species, all Sakaar are extremely tough and adaptable to practically any environment and even the most difficult of conditions, regardless of atmosphere, surface extremes, or even light. They do prefer the subsurface environment for both their own low light sources and consistent temperatures. In most all cases, Alpha Draconian colonies and outposts are set up within such a subsurface construct, and they only access the surface when required. It is this reason that the difficulty of eradicating them from their foothold restricts such action. It has been suggested that some of their military stations are actually built within large asteroids or small dead planetoids, both throughout the Empire and remotely. Their fundamental method of colonizing a world with an existing race was to build the initial base of operations underground and expand it over time, crisscrossing the planet with subsurface tunnels and connecting their key tactical installations. Their tunneling technology is reported to be considerably advanced and can complete very long distances regardless of strata conditions in quite a short time. During the early periods of this work, a centralized political power is arranged with certain groups of individuals on the surface within a similar, multi-layered caste hierarchy structure utilized by the Alpha Draconians, and these surface inhabitants were given absolute power, though in fact this was an illusion as the Sakaar ultimately ruled. In most all cases, this would prove to be an unsettling peace without a single shot being fired, simply by the excessive technology wielded. If any arbitrary case of global opposition appeared, the work underground would simply increase and the teas of advanced technology would be withheld. This would leave the surface inhabitants to remain at their former status quo, and on the Empire would grow, and grow it has. Imperial. Alpha Draconians are empiric in nature, sinister in motivation, and aggressive by character. It was thought they potentially threatened the stability of the entire galaxy because of these very tendencies. Though the Empire only grew in very short spurts, they continued to drive on gradually, consistently, and without interruption. It is not truly known if they were ever really confronted during the tens of thousands of millennia up to this point due to the nature of their willingness to wield vast technologically advanced military resources in overwhelming fashion at even the slightest irritation. It has thus become generally accepted that rather than test the water, it was best to stay out of it. They were generally avoided as long as they didn't overtly intrude on previously controlled or managed space. Their movements and activities appear to be quite broad as they consistently moved into nearby inhabited systems, especially those of lesser evolved races, and immediate control would ensue. Once this occurred, the Alpha Draconian Empire would not and apparently could not be forced to release its hold. The Empire is vast and stretches from the Cygnus Arm to the Perseus Arm and up to the origins of the Orion Arm. Though their population is considerably smaller in size than one would expect for such an old society, nonetheless, their foothold and realm of influence is solid and particularly avoided. All colonized systems and outposts within this range are very closely managed. An intrusion into large Empire space, accidental or not, is ill-advised. Long-term stagnation of the Empire also motivated them to spread throughout both further new systems as well as what can only be referred to as unknowns. Otherwise, no intervention or intercession by the other races is known to have been attempted, yet a guarded eye was always maintained. It wasn't until the Alpha Draconian Empire reached the borders of neutral space that the scale of outside attention increased. Empire borders and neutral zones had been well defined for literally eons. Even the similarly advanced Duo race had relinquished territory to the Empire solely for peacekeeping purposes and other as yet unknown agreements. This is known already. It is not known if there was ever any confrontation between the Empire and the Duo. Even though this culture was relatively technologically as advanced as the Empire, so alleviation of any hostilities was agreed upon between both cultures. The Sakaar also revealed a prolonged and vicious willingness to thrive, such that the Duo abdicated for intellectual reasons of survival, and their participation will reach fruition somewhat later. The relative abstinence of both committing to all-out warfare seems to have been relinquished due to nothing politically motivated, but related to cultural adaptation. The Duo perception of superiority over the Alpha Draconian Empire, and yet reticence to utilize it proved an unwillingness to confront militarily, which defined the long-term and disconcerting relationship between both cultures. The Lyran Wars. The Lyran War with man circa 280 million years ago. The Alpha Draconian Empire invaded the initial Lyran systems for what can only be assumed as their fear of the Tallman's ongoing expansions that might one day threaten the Empire, or for simple resources. Yet to this day, it is not really known if these were even the reasons. Whatever the actual case behind it initially, the time frame was very quick, and the first interstellar confrontation between two technologically adept races had begun. Very simply referred to as an outright shooting war, and it began directly from Alpha Draconis. Massive Sakaar fleets attacked the Lyran system colonies with advanced and competent ferocity. At the time, the Tallman tribal colonies were not as well equipped for warfare on this scale. It is not known whether or not a call for aid to the general community was made, or if any ever occurred. As more and more Empiric fleets entered these systems, it became obvious that these colonies were in danger of annihilation. The tribes did manage to stave off immediate genocide by sacrificing what battle-capable ships they did have in order to allow several of the besieged colonies time to escape with what few survivors they could manage, though these combatant craft were ultimately lost. The damage to the Lyran worlds was massive and the losses to life equally so. It has been suggested that entire planets were utterly lost. Outgunned by the vastly superior Alpha Draconian armadas, the targeted colonials were forced to ultimately flee to the safer outlying settlement homeworlds in the further reaches of Lyra away from the conflict. Some ultimately continued on to other colonies in the far-flung systems outside of Lyra. Some even returned to Syrian Asker. Note, it is also believed a tribe who left for Merzim from Lyra were accompanied by a fleet from Alpha Draconis as either an escort or effectively as prisoners, since there appears to be somewhat of an operative connection between a surviving Syrian Merzim Tallman tribe and an Alpha Draconian population, also located in the system. Questions regarding the nature of this relationship are obvious. Once the hostilities had eventually subsided, it is not known whether any portions of the tribes remained on these devastated worlds, or if Alpha Draconian outposts were established. In essence, the war was over nearly as quickly as it started. It is believed, due to the relative brevity of the confrontation, that there must have been severe damage to the Sekar fleets, or man's further colonial destruction would have been guaranteed. Alpha Draconis may have technically won the war to this point, but the physical losses of attrition to the Empire proved to be more than they had expected, as now they had to reconsider maintaining the Empire with diminished numbers. In an attempt to quickly recoup the fleet, a very small portion of the Armada positioned itself in the border between Lyra and the Empire, and the remainder returned to Alpha Draconian shipyards to refit and rebuild. Also at this time, there was the clear waning of the Sekar from their reproductive gap. This led to fears that many of them would eventually perish from simple longevity. Though the numbers of the warrior caste was still relatively vast, their total generational life cycle appears to be extremely close to some minor form of entropy as well. Since the apparent losses incurred during the war with man, Alpha Draconis immediately set out on a mission to rebuild their reduced numbers. It was decided that attempts should be made to increase their population by scientific hybridization in order to both defend as well as wage any further challenges to the Empire. Why they are here. They claim to have originated on Earth thousands of years ago, a fact that they use this to justify their attempt to retake the Earth for their own. Reptilians from Alpha Draconis, the Dracos, are in command of the Earth-based reptilians. Earth-based reptilians are in turn in command of the Tall Greys, who are in command of the Short Greys. Apparently, a major part of a planned invasion, which is eventually turning from covert infiltration mode to overt invasion mode as the window of opportunity slowly begins to close. They are attempting to keep the window open by suppressing advanced technology from the masses, which would lead to eventual Terran colonization of other planets by Earth, and an eventual solution to the population, pollution, food, and other environmental problems. If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing to us and hitting the like button. Feel free to write a comment below and suggest which theory you want to see next. If you'd like to further support this channel, please consider joining. Our membership link will be found in the description box below. We appreciate your support, and as always, thanks for watching.